Welcome to How Now, the podcast where we talk about how to live in the now. And here's your host, Kim Martin Raymond.
Peace and blessings, love and light, and welcome to this edition of the How Now podcast, where we talk about how to live in the now. I am your host, Kim Martin Raymond, and I'm a minister, spiritual life coach, holistic nutritionist, author, and founder of Redefining You LLC, where I help my clients to realign themselves, mind, body, and spirit. And welcome to season 6 of the How Now podcast. If you are new to the podcast, welcome to the show. We're so glad that you are here. Okay, this year, 2026 is all about execution. Over the last couple of years, we've created toolboxes so that way you can respond and not react to the things that are going on around you. So we've been putting things in those toolboxes, mind, body, and spirit, over the last couple of years. And last year, we did a 365-day challenge where you were challenged to create healthy habits so that you can make overall wellness a habit. So a lot of things have been going on over the last couple of years here on the How Now podcast. And like I said, this year is all about execution. So we are going to be having 4 segments where we're going to be talking about living your purpose, talking about financial fitness, talking about spiritual principles, and also talking about mind and what is it? Spirit body transformation, talking about ways in which we can, again, make overall wellness a habit. So if you are new to the show, please make sure that you go to my website, www.hownowpodcast.com, and be sure to click on your favorite podcast platform. Be sure to like, follow, share, and subscribe. You can also scroll to the bottom of the page, click on the banner for this week's show, and it will take you to the How Now YouTube channel, where you can check out all of my playlists. You can check out Spirit Body Transformation, where I talk about my wellness journey. You can check out my playlist on Tuesday, where I share a scripture verse every Tuesday. And you can also check out some of the shows that you've missed over the last 5 years. Okay. So again, that is www.hownowpodcast.com. All right. So let's get into tonight's show. We are going to be talking about living your purpose, and we're going to be talking about the bridge technique. That's something that we talked about in our last show, and we're going to be talking about the spiritual aspects of that. And so to help me to get along with that and to talk about, how we are going to navigate in that space is my guest. He is going to be my co-host over this season of the How Now podcast. And so I'm so excited that he's here. I'm so excited to share space with him. And I'm going to do as is customary with the How Now podcast and allow him to introduce himself. So take it away, my friend.
Hey, Kim. Good to see you again. Yep. So as she said, my name is Jason Jurado. My company is One Path. I'll mention that, people ask me, what does one path mean? Does it mean there's only one path to happiness or to your... No, there's many trails to the top of the mountain, but the top of the mountain is always the top of the mountain. And you have to find your path to get there. And that's what this journey is all about. And that's what this toolbox that we're going to be talking about again tonight is about, how you discover that and how you get on your path. So, for those that don't know me and didn't check out our last episode, and please do check it out. It's pretty amazing, if I do say so myself. For those that like the certificates and stuff, I'm a master practitioner, neurolinguistic programming, timeline therapy. I'm a master hypnotherapist. I'm certified in polyvagal theory. I'm also trained in Mahuna and other indigenous arts. And it all just kind of goes together in my toolbox to help folks to discover and live their purpose. And I have my own business, and I see clients, and I do talks like this and stuff. So it's amazing. Thank you for having me on again, Kim. I'm looking forward to this year.
I am so delighted that you are here. I'm looking forward to this year as well, and all of the wisdom that we are going to impart on our listeners. Like I said, make sure that you have a pen and paper ready, because Jason drops some wonderful nuggets and some great information that you're going to want to be able to tap into. And so on the bottom of the screen, scrolling across the bottom of the screen, is a link for the YouTube channel channel so that you can catch the show that you may have missed a couple of weeks ago. And there's also the website for Jason, which is www.onepathhealing, I believe I'm saying that right, .com.
Yes.
And that is scrolling across the bottom of the screen. So make sure that you check it out and see what other services Jason has available. Okay, so like you said, we were talking about the bridge technique the last time we were together. So let's do a little recap on that and let people know what they may have missed. So that way we can catch them up on what we're talking about this evening.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah. And like I said, check out the last episode. We go into it in more depth, but definitely want to talk about a little bit tonight just as we get started. The story started with I was talking to someone as I was, trying to figure out my marketing, trying to figure out how I can reach the people that I need to reach. And someone that's very close to me that was having their own personal struggles, as we do. I went to her and I said, hey, I'm going to talk to people about living their purpose, discovering their purpose, living with passion, all that. And she just kind of had a blank look on my face, and she was like, I can't even hear what you're saying. I was like, what? And she's like, where I'm at right now with myself and in my life, those words just don't even make sense to me. And one of the key concepts of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, is meeting people where they're at and then having respect for their model of the world. But that's a little bit deeper. We'll get into that down the road. And so when I started thinking about that, I was like, that's so true. You don't meet someone where you think they want to go, or trying to let them say, hey, figure out where you want to go and I'll help you get there. It's starting where they're at. And so, how do we do that? Well, a bridge. And I thought of what are acronyms for the bridge? And I have two versions. And so last time we went over, and I'll touch on briefly here, the bridge, the path of transformation. So with the B, be aware of your current situation, always starting with awareness. And then the R, remove limiting beliefs and negative emotions from the past that are holding you back. So just get rid of that clutter. What's holding you down? You have that backpack full of heavy rocks that is keeping you from going and excelling forward. So removing those rocks, so to speak. And then the I, we identify your core values and mission. Gaining clarity on what's truly important to you. That's what values are, is what's important to you. And then D, design a clear vision and strategy. Map out your path with practical steps. Sometimes we have these grandiose goals and it's like, well, that's huge. No, well, how do we get from here to here? That's what this whole thing is about. And then G, generate momentum and confidence, building on small successes. When I work with clients, one of the things that I really emphasize is celebrate. Celebrate the movement forward. Celebrate that one step, that half step, whatever it is. Give yourself credit. We hear so often, well, you got to be humble and don't brag and don't be cocky. And no, I have a friend that she has a whole program talking about bragging your butt off, and generating momentum and confidence just by building on those small successes, because that's how you do it, right? These are all steps. And then E, embrace your purpose and your potential, fully stepping into your authentic, empowered life, not being afraid to say, this is who I am, to be very transparent and open. Kim is saying about the one path healing. She's like, I'm saying that right? So if you look up most of my stuff, it's under One Path Coaching. And that was me. That was me being hesitant to step fully into who I am. I'm a healer. I was born a healer from early age. I knew it. But I've always been hesitant to use that word because of what it brings up. And am I going to get clients and the right clients and stuff? So I said, well, coaching. And this was, 20 years ago when I really started this whole journey. And I said, let's use coaching. And then it became more mainstream and it was. So I didn't change it because of that. I changed it because I wanted to honor myself and my journey. So that's what I did. And that's what E is, embracing your purpose and your potential and just being open to what shows up and being, that is me. That's what I'm doing that. And let's celebrate it.
Yes, I absolutely love that. I love that the concept, like you said, of a bridge, of a crossing over, of a making a transition. And that's something that is so empowering when you think about it, because it's allowing you to get from one space to another. Right. What is, if that bridge wasn't there, would there be an abyss, or would it be keeping you from getting to where it is that you're trying to go? Bridging to me means access.
Right.
Like you said, it's allowing me to be able to get someplace that I may not have been able to get to had that bridge not been there.
Right.
So I love that. I love that acronym. and everything that it represents, because it is about movement. It is about that momentum that you were talking about with the G. So,
Right.
I love
Yeah.
that concept.
Yeah, in NLP, there's linguistic versions of the same thing we do because once again, linguistically, you can't go from can't to can. And one of the kind of famous names in NLP, he says, if you can't, then you must, and if you must, then you can. And it's
Mm,
just a little play on words. That's what a lot of NLP is playing on language because that's our middle name. We say linguistics, but
yes.
that's that bridge going from wait a minute, I didn't even think because if you say I can't, you can't go to I can. That's very challenging. But if you go, but just that little kind of funny little humorous way of well, if you can't, then you must, and if you must, well, then you can. And it gives you that view that once again that bridge that sees oh there's the arc, oh I see where I'm going from here to there to there to there, not just that one leap. So yeah,
Yes.
it's exciting to be able to share this with people. And sometimes I break it down, sometimes we just do the work.
Yeah.
People don't care. That's like I said earlier, for those that care about my certifications, here it is. Some people like Jason, I don't care how you're certified or what, I just want to get these results. And I'm like, let's go, let's get these results. And so
Yes.
that's how it shows up.
The one thing I think that that always, when you tell the story of your friend and how she says, I just couldn't hear, I can't hear
Right.
what you're saying,
Yeah.
and that always strikes me every time you say that. It strikes me because you know I think about people when you're in the midst of a storm. Like I said, things are swirling around you, and I'm trying to talk to you. You can't hear me
Right.
because there are so many things going on. That's like trying to talk in a tornado. I'm like, huh? What? I can't hear you
Yeah.
because there's so many things spiraling around me. There's so many things that are distracting me that I can't hear what it is that you're trying to say. And
Right.
so every time you say that, it makes me think of that. It makes me think of, yeah, how do you hear things in the midst of a storm?
Yeah.
You can't. You can't. You
Yeah.
either prepare for the storm or you prepare for the aftermath. But when you're in the midst of it, it's hard to hear what it is that you need to hear or to see your way out. And so, just like you said, meeting people where they are. And sometimes it's in the midst of a storm. And like you said, they
Yeah.
can't hear. So we've got to get to a space to where they are able to hear or where they
Right.
are able to process what it is that you're saying. So,
Yeah. And one of the challenges too is that people, you and I do this work and it's our calling and it's our purpose and we know this stuff and we're trained in it as well. Of course, we have our personal toolboxes that we use. And so we know this, but sometimes people miss this. It takes a lot of compassion to help somebody.
yes.
It takes because you have to know when to step back and you have to realize, and we've all been there. I think that's kind of what we do, the
Mhm.
healed healer, so to speak. If you were to tell somebody that's having struggles and be like, oh, well, you just do this and you do that and it's fine, it's easy. The place that most people are at that moment is they're beating themselves up and they don't have compassion for themselves. So like one more thing I can't do. Well, if it must be easy for everyone else because you're just talking about it like it's just so easy.
Right.
So you have to be very careful with your language when you talk to people about that and honor them where they're at. And I don't mean to keep going to that, but it's so true
It's true.
because so often people want to help, but they want to help like, oh, well, suck it up and go here and just do this and just do that. And it's like when you're struggling, when you can't see the light, there is no there is no, oh, it's just the one step. It's just so sitting with them and honoring where they're at and finding out what's really going on
Mhm.
and saying, okay, well, let's start there. Let's start there. Let's not start at step one. Let's start at step zero. Let's start where we're sitting together and we're just being present. Let's figure it out. What is it, where you're at? Can you start thinking about what you might want? And then we
Mhm.
go from there. But that's that compassion because people are already beating themselves up already. People already want to get better. No one wants to stay in that same spot. People say, "Oh, they're where they're at because they want to be." That's just not true. They
Mhm.
might be where they're at because they don't see a way out. They don't understand there's something bigger and better for them. And so when you start from there, it's a breath of fresh air because someone actually, as we both know, is listening to them. Just starting by
Yes.
listen. Just
Yes.
let's hear it. Where are you at? What's your truth right now? And let's
Yes.
go. So many people they're downloading. And we were talking earlier about sharing wisdom off
Yes.
camera, so to speak, and about sharing wisdom. And people like to share information
Mhm.
and people like to share knowledge, but it's wisdom that's going to help transform people. And that's
Yes.
where the true healing comes in.
Yes, for me, I'm such a visual person, and I love good analogies. And what you're saying makes me think of a person sitting on the ground and you're standing up. You're looking in the same direction. You're seeing things, and it's not until you come and you sit down next to them that you're seeing things from their level. I work in childcare,
Yeah.
when they talk about the infant room and they talk about going down and doing tummy time and being on the floor, because that's how they're viewing the world.
Right.
And you've got to get down and see things where they're seeing things. And even when you're down there, you may see things differently. You may see more because of your experiences and because of the things that have happened in your life. You may see a blade of grass. You may see a dandelion coming up. You may see something that they didn't see,
Yeah.
but you got to at least come down and say, well, let me sit down next to you so that way I'm not standing over you or above you. I'm sitting
Right.
down there with you, and then tell me, have a conversation with me. What is it that you see? Because even though we may be sitting down together, I still may be seeing things differently because of the experiences that I have. And so I love that you say, don't just say just, because for them it's not a just.
Right.
Yes, we're looking, and even if we're looking things at the same level, because of my experience, I may see things more acutely than you're seeing things.
Right.
But if I ask you, so what is it that you see? Just like with a child, you ask them, what is it that you've drawn? You never just go and say a child, that's one thing that I say in my trainings all the time. You never, ever, ever just say, oh, that child says, Miss Kim, do you like my picture? The first thing I'm going to ask you is, what is it? Because
Right.
I don't want to put my own thoughts on what I think it is, and then
Right.
suppose I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I want to give you an opportunity to tell me what it is that you see and how you're seeing it. So at least I get some perspective outside of my own, you know? So I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And when folks are in that position and they're starting, they're probably tired of people telling them what they see. Well, this is what that is. No, we have that term that came up in the last 10 years, gaslighting.
Yes.
No, that's not what you see. You see something else. And that's how people feel, because now, given their filters, their view of the world, admittedly from them, is not the one that's helping them get to where they want to go. But it's not to call it out. It's not to say, "Oh, well, you're not seeing it right. No, that's clearly a giraffe. What are you talking about? It's a Shih Tzu dog." And they're like, "Well, I worked really hard on this, and this is what I think." And to go to your analogy, and it's like, "Oh, that's great. That's really cool. Well, how'd you come up with that idea? Oh, what'd you decide? Why'd you choose that color? Oh, that's how it goes."
Right.
And you help them to be able to express themselves openly, because a lot of times when you're in that place, you don't feel comfortable expressing yourself, and
Right.
that's why you shut down, because you're like, I'm just going to go inside. I'm just going to shut down. People aren't hearing me anyway. They're
Right.
getting it wrong. They're seeing that darn giraffe that's just not
Right.
there, you
Right.
know.
Right.
And so that's a great place to start, for sure.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so like you said, we're going to we've recapped the bridge, and we've talked about uh different concepts of getting some movement and getting some momentum.
Right.
Okay, now how do we add that spiritual aspect?
And thank you for that, for the opening, and thank you for
Mhm.
this opportunity to share this side of myself and the side of who I am and what I do. And we've, once again, off camera, we've had this discussion, and we've known each other for a while now, and
Yes.
talking about that, sharing that part is, know your audience, know who
Yes.
you're speaking with. And I don't share stuff just to share stuff. I am who I am, the Popeyes of the world, but at the same time, I have to know how people are going to hear me and what they're going to respond to. So I am a very spiritual person. I have this side. I have this side, and I monitor it and I moderate it to who I'm talking to. And
Yes.
so thank you for this opportunity to be able to share this side. When I came up with this bridge technique, I did just that. The first one that I just shared again, and I shared on the first episode, that's that analytical, that's that step by step. That's the one that I share with kind of across the board with my clients. And then people come up to me, and if someone approaches me from that space of spirituality and growth, and their in
Mhm.
that part of their lives, or that conversation changes to that, it allows me to go, oh, ooh, okay, let's do this. Let's go as deep as you want to go. And
Right.
so within that, when I built the first bridge, that was it. That was the standalone model. And then I took a step back and I had basically this conversation with myself and said, well, you have to have something more because you are more. And so, I shared last time, and I share this a lot, where Michelangelo making David.
Yes.
And there's two quotes about how he responded, and it's just, I like it because one speaks to the pragmatic the first bridge, and one speaks to this. And with the first version, he said, Michelangelo's quoted about, like, he said, you'd have this huge piece of marble and other famous artists had tried to do something with it and they didn't. How did you make this amazing sculpture of David? And on the pragmatic side, he said, I just simply cut away everything that wasn't David. And I share that for that.
Yes.
But the other quote that's attributed to him during that same question was, he said, I saw the angel in the marble and I carved until I set him free. And that's that shift. And that's, because, I talk about, there's a difference between healing and curing. I don't cure. That's not my world. I'm not a doctor. I don't treat, cure, diagnose, all that stuff. Curing is one thing. I help people heal, and healing is coming home. Healing is cutting all that away until you set that angel free, right? So that's where I started from. And so on this one, to get into the nuts and bolts, we talk about that toolbox.
Yes.
For the bridge technique of the spiritual path to transformation, the B is balance your emotions in your nervous system. Now, these are both similar, but there's just a different approach to them. They both kind of walk you through the same process, but this is speaking to someone that's looking from a more spiritual aspect. So balancing your emotions in your nervous system. Here's what you were talking earlier about this, and I was like, ooh, we're going to get into this. Grounding yourself in the present moment. Creating inner harmony as a foundation for growth, having that awareness once again where you're at. But that's that meditation. That's that be here now. That's that really, because if you're not on your path, you have a lot of distractions in your life. There's a lot of stuff going on, and you can fill a lot of time in this world with distractions. Phone, TV, computer, there's a lot of things, and that's could be good stuff for sure, if you're not using it as a distraction, if you're using it to relax and then go do something else. So with the B, we start with balancing your emotions and nervous system. That comes from being present, knowing where you're at, and saying, wait a minute, why am I getting angry all the time? Wait a minute, where is this sadness coming from? And we start to work on that. Then the R, we'll just keep moving, and please interject as you see fit. This is your show. I'm in your house. But so then we go to R, and R is reconnect with your inner wisdom. And like I said, we all have that inside of us. We have that intrinsic built into us. We just put so much stuff on top of it. We have to cut that away. So it's releasing old patterns by tuning into your intuition, spirit, and unconscious mind. As we talk, we'll talk about spirit, God, and whatever it is to you, as those that have joining us, whether that's spirit, God, creator, universe, Gaia, creator. There's a lot of terms that use, and whatever it fits for you, whatever it is. I use God because I'm quoting somebody and this is what they said, but it fits with, I don't use God all the time. I'll say creator mostly, spirit.
Source. Yes.
Right. Source. Yes. I love it. So the quote is, prayer is you talking to God, and intuition is God talking to you. So that's that inner wisdom. So when you step back and you try and you hear that inner voice and you start to trust it again, because you talked about the storm. It's a beautiful, visual. We have that storm of life and you're just trying to hold on. But when you go inside the house and you close the shutters and you turn the heater up or get the fireplace going in that storm, you're safe inside. Yeah. And that's the beauty of it. So it's just really reconnecting with that. And then we move on to I. And I is imagine a new future. Aligning with your soul's calling by visualizing what you truly desire at your deepest level. Once again, discovering what you truly want. So that I is imagining a new future. And as my friend said, I can't even hear you right now. So that was that. But this is the third step. We've already kind of got some balance and some emotions and nervous system. We've already reconnected with the inner wisdom. Now it's like, now we've pulled that stuff away, and that's an ongoing process. But now start to imagine a new future and really aligning with your soul's calling. They say that you don't have a soul, you are a soul. People say, oh, we're a body and we have, when we have a soul. It's like, no, you're a soul and you have a body. Just to throw that in there, I like to mention that. So that's what that starts with.
You're a spiritual being living a human experience, is what we hear people say often as well. Yes,
exactly. And then we get to D, and D is to deepen your self-trust and resilience. Strengthening your ability to navigate life transition with faith and confidence, whatever it looks like to you. And also we're going to step into the same one as designing a plan to achieve it. A lot of times people talk about resilience and they get it muddy. Yes. Resilience isn't sucking it up. Resilience isn't just figuring it out. People will say children, boy, they're really resilient. And here's my question to them: at what cost?
Right.
If a child or if any person is, they'll bounce right back up, but are they truly emotionally capable of processing it, or are they just a wounded person that's not showing it and not sharing it, and we're not allowing them to express themselves in that way? So resilience is not just go in the room and cry and then come back out and wipe the tears off and I'm okay. That's not true resilience. Yeah, true resilience is really having the tools to handle these situations and process these things as they come up. And that takes work. It does.
Yes.
But that's where that comes in, deepen your self-trust and your resilience.
Yes.
Then we move into G and grow into your new identity. Embody the mindset and spiritual practices of the person you are becoming and start taking action towards the goal. But as we talked about before, this is the part where you really start to go, wait a minute. I am strong. I am a good person. I am all these. I'm not saying you didn't think that before, but that's the mindset. I can do these hard things and I can do it with a smile on my face. Yes. And I am supported and I am loved. A lot of times we miss that and we start to push it away. And it's like, no one loves me. And we get to these things and everyone's different. This isn't to say people aren't suffering or they're not in the right room. That's what the truth is. If you're not surrounded by loving people in a good community, and I talk a lot about community and you do as well,
yes.
You're not in the right room, and that's not your fault. That's just the current situation, like we talked about. We pick up our good stuff and we move to the right room. We find our community, and then you start to grow. That's the amazing part. When you're like, wait a minute, I was just not in the right soil. Now I'm in the right pH, and I got the right nitrogen, and I got the right, as your gardeners out there could probably correct me on that. Then you go, wow, and you see that growth start to show up.
Yes.
And you blossom, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
And then from there, E, the last letter, embody your highest self. You fully integrate your transformation. You live in alignment with your divine purpose. You're overcoming challenges. You're stepping into your new life. You're asking yourself, what can I do? Not what can I not do? You say, what can I do? Where can I go? Where is this going to take me? And you start to just really embody all this change and shift. And you take this momentum and it moves you down that path.
I love it. Because what it says to me is that, you've taken that initial bridge that you've created, that's taken you, and you've gone through that transition, because, it all stems from that place of acknowledgement.
Right.
Me, it's acknowledging, okay, this is where I am, and these are some things that I'm learning and understanding about myself, and now I can move into that place of transformation. I can look at those things and start to be able to balance those things. It's very hard for you to get to a place of healing if you can't acknowledge that something is wrong. That's why, when we've been so conditioned as a people, I think, to, when somebody says, oh, hey, Kim, how you doing? Oh, I'm great. You can feel like hot garbage. You could be having the worst day, but by rote, we just automatically say, oh, I'm great. I'm fine. I have learned, and my husband knows this better than anybody else. Sometimes he'll go, hey, babe, how you doing? And some days I'll just say, I'll be okay. And he's like, oh. And he says, well, is there anything that I can do to help
Right.
today? Or he'll just be like, come give me a hug. Or he'll come over and give me a kiss on my forehead, and he's just like, okay, because I if I don't feel good, and I know that it's just a fleeting moment, because again, I'm human, so I'm going to experience emotions. I just say, I'm going to be okay. And then he may check in with me a little later on, and I'll be like, I'm good. And he'll be like, oh, okay, that's better. I'm glad that you're better.
Right.
But it's being able to acknowledge that I'm having a feeling, or that I need to change my mindset about something. A lot of these things that you talked about here, are mindset issues. Being able to reconnect with our inner wisdom, being
Right.
able to tap into, imagining our future. We can't do those things if we can't, like you said, see where we are.
Yeah.
If we're not meeting people where we are, if we're not meeting ourselves where we are, you know, how can I, am I just supposed to tell somebody, oh, I'm over here by this tree and standing in this field? Well, where is the field?
Right.
Where are you? How can someone come and tell you, I'm just going to be yelling, help, save me, and I can't even tell you where I am?
Yeah.
I can just scream in the wilderness and say I'm lost. But if I'm lost and I can't tell you where I am, or the vicinity of where I am, where's my mindset? Where's my thought? Or what are my thought processes?
Right.
So a lot of this to me is just being able to first acknowledge, and then just say okay, and then acknowledge, and then see who is it or what is it that I need to assist me in, like you said, gaining that momentum and being able to move forward so that I can do these things. Some people don't, when you say living your purpose, some people, and I've heard this often myself, I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know
Right.
what I'm destined to do. Sometimes we haven't been introduced
Yeah.
to what it is that we are seeking to do. I tell this story all the time. I didn't know, my friend said you'd make a great coach, and I was like, girl, I'm like, at the time I was like almost 300 pounds. I was like, who's coaching what? Who am I running behind? Or I don't know
Right.
anything about sports. I was like, I played the clarinet. I don't know anything about. I was like, what are you talking about? So
Yeah.
it's just a matter of saying, I didn't know, because my mind wasn't open. Sometimes we're
Right.
so minded. Sometimes we've been immersed in environments that don't allow us to see,
Right.
or don't allow us to experience things. I think it is a blessing to be raised in this area in this age of technology,
Right.
where when we were younger, we had the card catalog. We were just confined to whatever was in the library, whatever was in our neighborhood, whatever was.
Yeah.
And now we have access to information from all the way around the world
Yeah.
and beyond. And so, it's just trying to, you know, determine, where I am, what it is that I'm seeking to do, and how do I get to that space.
Right.
And it's just a lot of people who are lost and confused and trying to figure out where that is.
Right. Yeah. And one thing I do want to mention, a couple things, but purpose is a big word.
Yes.
Purpose can be a little daunting. It could be a little, you can feel overwhelmed when you start talking. Like you said, people, what are you talking about, my purpose? And this is the little silly thing I tell people all the time, because of the looks that I get when we get to that word, we've built it up to mean something huge. It's like we see purpose like standing on the top of a building like Superman, or Wonder Woman or whatever.
Right.
That no, I tell folks, I say, you know what? When I wake up in the morning, every morning, you know what my purpose is? Getting out of bed. And then you know what my purpose is behind that? Feeding these darn cats that I got, because they're going to get fed. That's my purpose. Literally, that's my purpose. I turn the alarm off in the house and I feed these cats. That's my purpose. And it's kind of tongue in cheek and joking, but it's true. And
Yes.
it's these things, what's my purpose? It doesn't have to be, well, I'm going to save the world. I'm going to do this. And that might be where your mindset is going, but well, how are you going to achieve that? Because what we can do is then we can back up and go, okay, so Jason, you said your purpose is to get out of bed. Well, what do you mean? So let's dig into that. So what is that? That means I'm ready. I'm stepping into life. That means it's more than just getting out of bed. I'm ready for my day. I'm taking that breath. I'm saying, Wayne Dyer, who's left us,
Yes.
he jokingly used to say, you have two type of people that'll wake up in the morning and go, good morning, God. And you have some people that go, good God morning, you know? And so that's your choice. And so when I say my purpose is to get up, my purpose is to get in motion and start that day and say, you know what? I have a human life. I am here. I am present. I am moving forward. So you dig deeper into that. Well, okay. So then you say, okay, you're next to feed your cats. Well, that's community. That's love. That's connection. That's what that is. It's not just that simple act. So you can look at things and go, well, that's easy. Well, guess what? It is. Can be simple to start moving towards but if you can't see it, you can't see it. Getting out of bed is just getting out of bed. There was a very famous book by, I think it was a Navy commander or something, talks about make your bed every day. And it was very famous, and he got paid a lot of money to give speeches, and he got through to people because he talked about that's getting started, that's getting moving, that's discipline, there's so much things behind that. So that's what is behind your purpose. Don't get overwhelmed with this big pictures. Just start small, but then when you start small, go, well, what's important to me about that? And then when you start playing that tape of, wait a minute, that's why that's important to me. That's why that's important. Then you see those threads, and then you see the connections, and that helps you start going, wait a minute. Oh, I see. This is what I'm passionate about. This is what's important to me. Now you can say, how am I going to get there? How am I going to start down that path to make this bigger?
Yes. I love that. I absolutely love that. And that's what it's about. It's about, like you said, we always are well, I don't want to say always. Be careful with my words.
Yes.
Linguistics, just like you said. You know, we we want, we tend to look at grandiose thing, that everything has to be this big majestic thing instead of those simple things, but that takes us back to gratitude. That takes us back to those small things. I'm glad that I woke up this morning and there was a ceiling above me and I wasn't outside looking amongst the stars in this brick weather that we're having out here.
Right. Yeah.
Though we tend to, oh well, if it's not this and if it's not that, there are so many societal things and that have created this false sense of what things are supposed to be.
Right.
And just like you said, there are so many words that are used in improper context, and it's because we've been conditioned to believe that that's what it is. There are so much propaganda. There are so many things that we see on that flood our ear gates and our eye gates that are not always the best for us. And we have to be able to get to a place of discernment. We have to be able to get to a space of being able to say, okay, that's not my experience, and that doesn't mean that it's wrong. Okay, who sets the rubric on life? Is there one? I'm like, is there? Because just like, is there a rubric on parenting? Is there a rubric there? And who determines that?
Yeah.
And so, we, as human beings, I think sometimes we try to, like you said, we're always trying to find a box or a place for things to go, and we want them to fit perfectly, and it's not like that for everybody. And so, it's important. And I like that you break that down, that, purpose, just getting out of bed, just moving. One thing that, I'm doing a show tomorrow, and one thing that, that I'm going to speak about, and I was talking about 365 days, the one thing that I think I want people to remember is that unless you're no longer here, every day, you're showing up for yourself every single day.
Right.
The biggest question is, what is that day going to look like for you? You may not show up to work. You may not show up, for friends or family or something. You may not show up, but you're showing up for yourself every single day that you wake up and you choose to take a breath. You're here. you're present. Now what that day looks like, if that day looks like you're going to be under those covers all day and you're not getting up, it's all
Right.
right. But you're still here.
Right.
You're still present for yourself.
Right.
It's not for anybody else. If you don't choose to see anybody else, you're present for you.
Yeah.
And it's really going to be about determine what you're going to do with that day. Like you said, are you going to make that bed? Are you going to be present? Are you going to hide? What is that you're going to do? But the one person that you show up for every single day, unless your last breath has been taken, is you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a powerful thing.
Yeah. And as we talk, and there might be people listening that might be like, what do you mean getting out of bed's a big deal? There are a lot of folks, and there's been people in my life that they don't want to get out of bed,
No,
and they don't. And there's
no,
times when you can't get off that couch, and there's times, and and this is where the compassion comes in, because here's the wake up call. If you're looking at somebody and go, what do you mean they can't get out of bed? Well, what if somebody that gets out of bed at 5 a.m. and runs 5 miles was to hear what you do? And they're like, what do you mean you don't get out of bed and run 5 miles? Right?
right.
We're all at where we're at. And so we can honor that. And it's not right or wrong. It's what works for you and what's in the moment. And if staying in bed and is what is going to get you through that morning, until you can get that support that you need to be able to, or change that mindset, what happens to
Mm,
be able to pop out of bed and do your thing and make your bed and feed the cats and all that,
right.
then that's where you're at, and honor that and say, you know what? I just don't have it today. I just don't, because it compounds. Like I
Mm,
was talking about earlier, if you start getting hard on yourself and you're like, oh, I'm a loser, I don't get up, blah, blah, blah,
right.
is that going to help you move forward, or is that going to keep you anchored to the
See,
negative stuff? It's going
that's
to keep
right.
you anchored to the negative stuff. And it's like, take it easy on yourself. We're all living this experience at different places and at different times,
That's
and
right.
I don't know if you agree or disagree. I'm gonna say something controversial here.
Absolutely. Go for it.
People say, oh, we all have the same 24 hours. That's not necessarily true. That now 24 hours is what that's based on this big rock that we're on spinning and going and placement, and
Right.
someone's
Right.
made that up. But the reality is, if you have a certain job, or if you have kids, or if you have we all have these different responsibilities that are going to take up our time in different ways. So
Right.
yeah, you might be and it's usually these billionaires that are saying, it's usually people that grew up well, and I'm sorry, but that grew up wealthy and were supported and had this money, and oh, well, I've got all this. Well, yeah, that's a little different when you don't have to worry about paying the bills. It's a little
Right.
different when you don't have to hustle. It's a little different when everything's going your way, and when you have power and you have control.
Right.
And we both know that this is an abundant universe. Let me just say this. Let me pause that. This is an abundant universe, and it's there for us.
Mhm.
And that's another conversation, though.
That's
That's not this conversation. This conversation is honor yourself, honor where you're at. Don't
right.
compare yourself to others. Like you said, who are you comparing yourself to? Who set the, I always say rulers. I'm like, who makes
Yes.
your measuring stick?
That's
Who
right.
who set that?
That's right.
Because you're measuring yourself based on what? On someone else's abilities or on someone else's circumstances?
Right. Right.
So that's what this honors. This honors you're at where you're at. If I meet somebody, like I said, honor their model of the world, meaning this is how you see life right now. But if
Mm,
I was to meet with someone and go, oh, that's wrong.
right.
Well, two things. One, they're like, I don't want to work with you. So
Right.
that's a moot point. And two, they're like, well, that's not fair, because this is how I think and this is where I'm at. And then we can say, you know what? Okay. Is that serving you? Is that
Right.
helping you? Is that getting you to where you want to go? Yes. All right. We're good. Or not really. Okay. Well, let's start looking at that. And that's where you can start to deconstruct. And I do want to mention this one thing. We're going to spend time together this year going through this program. And so, we wanted to roll it out. Thank you for the opportunity to roll out these bridge techniques. As we go through the year, we're going to dig deep into what does the B actually mean, and what does it look like realistically? What does it look like, practically? So what are some of the techniques I use? What are some of the things? And you and I will discuss it. So if anyone listening goes, well, they kind of went over it fast, we just want to touch the tops of the trees, kind of get you used to it so you know the language,
That's
and
it.
then we'll dig into it, because what's this about, right? How now? How are we going to do this now? And so this
Yeah.
is going to be building these toolboxes to help. Working with someone always tends to be better, because sometimes you can't see the things that, you're looking in that mirror, and that mirror is just reflecting back
Yes.
you, and you can't see a different reality. And so that's what we're here to do, right? We're going to help kind of shine some different lights on things so they can see things in a different viewpoint.
I just have to take a breath because I'm like, yes, that's it. That's exactly what we're going to be doing, and that's exactly what my hope is. As we're going through the rest of this year, just being able to peel back the layers, being able to, again, add things to our mental toolbox, things that are going to help us to be able to cope. And that is my acronym that I borrowed from my dear friend Sharonda, and that means to create our peaceful existence. That is what we're doing to cope. I love that. When she came up with that, I was like, I'm going to use that forever. And so just get ready to hear it every single time I get an opportunity to share that. That's what I'm going to do. We are going to use to cope. We're not putting the band-aid on things and trying to pacify ourselves in a way that's not going to provide healing. We want to definitely make sure that we're, loosening that soil, so to speak. That way, because we've gotten hardened to a few things. Life has hardened us to a few things, and we have to get to a space of having, biblically speaking, a heart of flesh, being able to receive things that we need that are going to help us to expand, and that are going to challenge us, and that are going to help us to grow. And that is the purpose of having these conversations, to be able to give you a different perspective, to give you a path to that healing.
Right.
You see that you're a one path healing. We know that there are different paths that we're going to take, but we want to be able to know what our options are.
Right.
We don't want to just say this is the one set way that you can go. Just like you said, there's more than one way to get there. But if we don't create those pathways so that we can begin to make a determination as to which way is going to be the best way for us to go, then we're going to just continue to walk around in circles. We don't want to be lost. We don't want to be lost. We want to find ourselves, and redefine ourselves, as my business is called. It's about getting us to a place of wellness, getting us to a place of creating our peaceful existence. And so with that, all I will say is we have more to come. There's more to come. Jason, I'm so excited that you're here again, and that we're sharing this space, and that we're just scratching the surface. We're giving you that outline, that template that you need, and then we're going to take a deeper dive as we go through these months to come. And so, like I said, I'm grateful for sharing this space with you. I'm grateful that you're taking the time to be here and to help us to get to that place of healing. So thank you again for being here. And like I said, more to come. We're looking forward to it. Make sure that you, contact Jason, reach out to him, go to his website, www.onepathhealing.com. We'll make sure that we put that, in the description as the show airs in a couple of weeks. Make sure that you go to www.hownowpodcast.com,
Yes.
check out the YouTube channel, and make sure you like, follow, share, and subscribe, so that way you can check out some of the shows that you missed, that you could check out the show that you missed, our first episode where we were talking about the bridge techniques. Make sure that you check it out. Make sure that you hit that notification bell so you know when the next show is airing. And with that, do you have any other parting words before we go, Jason?
Love yourself, love others, and walk towards peace.
All right. With that, I'm going to say thank you for joining us for this edition of the How Now podcast, where we talk about how to live in the now. And until we see you all the next time, I say peace.